afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Mind Split Cafe. Matt, what's going on? We got we got a familiar face and a new one.
Yeah, I'm so glad that she's back. She's been MIA for a while, and Alexis is joining us. So thank you, Alexis, for joining us today. We're excited to have you again.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've missed you guys. So it's nice to be here with you.
yeah, absolutely. And you brought a partner in crime along with you, Jake, who is a peer support specialist, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, recovery peer support specialist.
Welcome to the
Nice.
show, Jake.
Yeah, thank you guys. Really excited for y'all to have me. Appreciate y'all having me here.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thanks for showing up. In today's episode, you know what? I've had a few different emails and people asking questions on addiction. And I know we've done a couple of episodes on addiction in the past, but we all know that addiction is a complex brain disorder, and there's various pathways to recovery, and there's various things that come along with addiction and recovery. And first and foremost, we all know that recovery is not a moral failing, and it is actually a brain disorder. So that was like one
Mm.
of the biggest questions that I've been getting. So I just wanted to throw that out there at first. It is not a moral failing, and there are various pathways to recovery. And
Mm.
Alexis and Jake are here with us today to discuss the different pathways, or actually one of the most prominent pathways, which is 12 steps.
Yeah.
So I will throw you guys the ball and we can get started.
Yeah. And before we get started, I kind of wanted to talk about the pathophysiology behind the disease process and how the alcoholic brain differs from the normal brain, because this was such an awakening in my own journey. Because up until then, kind of like what you said, like it felt like a moral failing. Like I had a lot of guilt and shame around the way that I drank and the way that I couldn't stop drinking and the way that I put alcohol in my body and like what I did and how I behaved. Because it was so far from the person I truly am at heart and who I was when I didn't have alcohol in my body.
Mm-hmm.
And I think understanding, and I hope this resonates with people who are struggling, like understanding the disease process it planted a seed to allow me to truly surrender in such a way that I am an alcoholic, and like accepting that allowed me to have a path forward into a solution to change my life. And just to like give you guys like a example of how I drank and what that looked like compared to my peers in high school. I remember me and two of my best friends, Catlin and Brittany, went to a party, and this is like I'm a millennial, right? I'm 36 years old. So this is like blue sky vodka days. Like I don't even know if people still drink it, but we would chug it like it was water. We went to a party and I drank 10, and this is like the second time I drank, right? Like from the first moment I drank, like once I put it into my body, like I wanted more. Like it was a visceral reaction. I drank 10 shots, they drank 3 or 4. My mom picks me up, I'm like puking all over myself in her gold minivan. She tosses me in the shower, hoses me down. And like that was a normal night for me. But I remember waking up the next day and being like, okay, regardless of those consequences, like I still want to try to figure out how I can drink.
Mm.
I still want to drink, but next time I'm just gonna do like Catlin and Brittany and just drink 3 or 4 shots and get tipsy and not get caught and have all these consequences. But I still like the way that it made me feel. But then yet again, I would do the same thing, and I never could stop. There was
You were
never a
chasing
stop
it.
button. I
Yeah,
was
you were
chasing
chasing
it.
it.
It's like they
Yeah,
call chasing the dragon,
Mm.
yeah.
And I never understood, because in every other area of my life, I was so disciplined, except for my reaction to alcohol, because it is an abnormal reaction, which we like to call in recovery the allergy.
Yep.
And at a pathophysiological level, when I learned that my brain reacted differently once I put alcohol into my body, my midbrain, so our midbrain is like our primitive brain. Think about what it releases a neurotransmitter dopamine, which is part of our reward system, going back to like the caveman days. We have to have these reward systems for survival, for procreation, to seek food, shelter, water, these very basic needs. we have to have that dopamine release. But we live in like this crazy abundant world where everything has a reward system, whether that's social media, whether it's pornography, even, and it's all synthetic, right? So even
Yeah.
alcohol. And so I can take, 50 people and see 45 of them can socially drink. They can drink, might get a little tipsy. They're like, hey, I got to drive in a couple hours. I'm going to stop drinking. But this other 5, they don't have a stop button. And like, I was one of those 5, right?
Mm.
And that's because when we both put alcohol into our body, and given like everyone reacts differently to everyone's brain reacts differently to substances and even behaviors. For like, just for instance, like somebody might have overeating disorder, and then other people won't, because their brain isn't reacting in the same way that this other person's brain is reacting. So when 2 people drink alcohol, my brain is lighting up like 10 times the normal amount as that other person, and it's at a primitive level, like survival level.
Yeah, survival mode.
Yeah, and that dopamine rush is so powerful that my prefrontal cortex, my higher level of thinking that can rationalize, like, hey, you just puked all over yourself. You're sick as heck today. You are now grounded for a month. You probably shouldn't do that again.
Yeah.
Right out the door.
Yeah, right out the door after I have one drink, because my brain has such a strong reaction to the way that alcohol is once it's in my body. And I think once I learned that, like that guilt and that shame that I had been carrying around me, that kept me in like this sick cycle of like needing to escape the guilt and the shame with more drugs and alcohol, was somewhat, in a sense, alleviated for me, and allowed me to, and I know Jake's, going to talk about recovery and what that looks like for us in recovery, but the most important step is like accepting that I was powerless over alcohol. And, it sounds like a negative concept, but when I can surrender to the fact that I am powerless over alcohol on like a genetic, physiological level,
Yeah.
then I can be willing to do something different, and accept the fact that I'm probably never going to drink like a normal person,
Yeah.
It's just not
Now, I have a
possible.
question. Do you come from a family or a family history of alcoholism? Like, is there some, like a grandfather or a mom, dad? Like, is there somebody that in your lineage,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah?
My grandfather was a raging alcoholic. I love him. But
Yeah.
yeah. But my mom, I mean, she told me, because my mom grew up with him and he never really got better. I think he had like little spurts
Yeah.
of sobriety. But when she saw the way that I drank, I mean, she told me, like, you drink
She
like
was
my
like, this
dad.
is, yeah.
You
My
drink like my
grandma
dad.
was my grandma was 50 years sober when she passed.
Wow.
And she would take me to AA meetings when I was 7, we would
Yeah, I
go
remember
visit her
you
in
saying
Houston.
that.
Yeah, I would go because that's where I got donut holes and Hot Wheels.
Yeah,
So,
Yeah.
I remember
but
that. You brought
I
that
thought
up
she
on one of
was
the episodes.
I thought she was really important because she was, she had a meeting, like a business meeting. I thought my grandma was like super, super influential and powerful, and like she could bring her grandson to a meeting, and so yeah, I remember going, and I was curious to know your history as far as is it kind of generational where there is, a history where it could be passed down,
And
Oh
so
yeah.
that was
There's
yeah,
a good
definitely,
question. It was a really good question because addiction is a biopsychosocial model.
Yes.
So that is part of it.
yeah,
That was a really good question, actually.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
Hey, thank you guys for taking the time to bring awareness around this stuff, and kind of building off what was already said around I work with a lot of guys that, man, they come in there, and the ability to the lack of ability, I should say, to be able to stop, it generates such a level of fear and shame around really opening up around their experience. And they think that something morally is wrong with them because throughout their experience with drugs or alcohol, that's what they've been getting told, that you're a bad person, that this and that. And it's kind of like, especially when you work with older guys or ladies that are just well into this deal and have passed a certain point that's very near and difficult, impossible to get back from. It's there's this connotation that's built in the head that, man, I'm a bad person, right? That I'll
Mhm.
always be this way. And it's horrifying seeing people come and really speak that about themselves. I'm just a piece of this. I'm just a piece of that. And you can tell that they've been living in this mindset or this delusion for a multitude of years, asleep to the idea that, man, maybe you just don't have the power to be able to stop. That it's not something that you're choosing to do. I don't think that anyone that goes down the path of addiction or alcoholism is choosing to wake up in jail cells, is choosing to wake up in other
No, of
people's
course not.
houses, right? Right. And they never want to go there, but they wake up from these tornado-like experiences and they ask themselves these questions like, how did I get here? And the only thing that they're left with is that, man, I must just be a bad person. And so when you have like podcasts like this and people pushing out information around it, hey, if you're struggling with these things, it's not because you're an evil person. There's something that's genetically wrong with you, right? There's a
Mhm.
predisposition that you have
Absolutely.
that's outside of your control. And it is like, to admit that stuff, it seems like I'm acting as if I'm weak or defeated, right? If there's a problem with my house, if there's a window that's broken, the house isn't the problem, right? There's just something that needs to be fixed, right? In order for me to
Yeah.
actually begin to work on that
Mhm.
problem, I have to be able to identify it from that kind of spot. And now that opens up these different pathways or journeys that I'm able to take in regards to what is going to be the best fit from get me to a spot of this false reality I've been living in a sense, into that path of sobriety, into recovery, into a community of people who understand and that are willing to help really everybody
Mhm.
with that kind of stuff. So I really
You
greatly
mentioned
appreciate y'all.
genetic disposition, right?
Hmm.
I mean, people obviously are born with this genetic disposition. I would it be similar to like, and forgive me, right? Because I'm just asking him, but would it be consider? I mean, would it be similar to like someone being born with like a peanut allergy, where you can't eat peanuts because there's a reaction and there's consequences for this act, right? Would it be similar that you have this alcohol in your system and your brain reacts a way that normal people wouldn't react, their brain wouldn't react, and so now it is totally, it's obviously it is what it is, right? So
Hmm.
I'm just curious, is it similar? But obviously alcohol is a lot more threatening because now you can get behind a wheel and you can do,
Yeah.
violent acts or whatever. I'm curious. So forgive me if it was a simple, stupid question.
Mhm.
No, that's a good one. And I'll defer it to you guys. I mean, I think that Alexis, you absolutely have both of you have a brilliant knowledge on it, and I'd love to hear what both of you have to say on that part.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good way to describe it because I think it's hard for people to conceptualize it,
Hmm.
and comparing it to a actual physical allergy because it is an actual physical allergy,
Mm-hmm.
but it's more complicated because it's so emotional and
Yeah.
mental as well,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
and
Oh, I
so I
agree with
think,
that for sure.
yeah, and I think it's hard because a lot of times when we are in our addiction, like that is, we act in ways that we wouldn't and we harm others, including ourselves, and I think that it's very different than a peanut allergy. It's like if you eat a peanut allergy, you just harm yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's
And
your
so
primal brain takes over at that point, and we all know the primal brain is in charge of survival at the very most, or at the very least, it's in charge of survival, and you're literally just trying to survive at that point.
Oh, agreed. I was just going to the genetic
Yeah.
disposition where it's kind of like a
mhm.
peanut allergy. You're born with it and you deal with it. I was just, is it similar in the same sense where you're born with this genetic disposition of alcoholism, and you obviously alcoholism is a lot more dangerous because, like you said, Alexis, you could end up harming not just yourself but others around you, right? In a peanut analogy, it's just
So,
more of, you know, so that's what
and
I was
something
just trying
that
to,
I
yeah.
actually, yeah, and something that I've learned throughout my time as a detox nurse, because I just figured when I walked into recovery, and into addiction medicine, that everyone was like me, like they drank alcoholically from the first moment they drank. But after talking to so many hundreds of people and like learning about their stories, I would say there is a huge portion of that. But some people, it's a progressive illness, it's a progressive disease where maybe they drink socially 10 years, and then COVID happened. That was one that we saw a lot. COVID
Yes.
happened. All of a sudden they're working remotely, they're at home, they don't have the same level of accountability, and they're just drinking because like we're in this huge pandemic where we're all experiencing like this
Yeah.
traumatic experience together, and they're trying to cope the best they can. And they have 2 kids at home and their husband, and they're fighting, and there's like all these outside stressors, and they're temporarily relieved
Mm,
from those feelings with alcohol. And
Yep.
then to get that sense of relief, they have to drink more every day, and
mm,
more and more and more. And it's like almost to this point of no return,
Mm-hmm.
where you've now crossed the line where your brain is now chemically different than it used
mm,
to be.
mm,
And every time you put alcohol in your body, you drink alcoholically. And I've
mm,
seen that happen. And I've seen a lot of people, and that can be really challenging, right? Because you've just spent 10 years drinking socially, and you keep trying to get back and back and back to that place, but yet you can't. And so I think that can be really hard for people to accept, is the
mhm.
Mm-hmm.
progression of the illness.
And to build off that like peanut analogy that you used, imagine if like that you started eating peanuts and they gave you a really good sense of being full or satisfied, and then you start to
Yep.
notice that other foods no longer give you that same level of satisfaction. And so when it comes to drinking or using, it's like the only real relief that you're able to experience is by going back to that peanut. There's a part of you that knows very much that if I put this peanut in my body, that things are not going to be good, but if I'm not putting these peanuts in my body, man, I'm just always hungry. And it
Yeah.
continues to drive them back to it, drive them back to it, drive us back to it, even though there isn't like a real desire, even sometimes, to go and do it. I don't know if anyone has the experience of putting it in their body when they don't want to. But that's a, yeah, it's a
For
Yeah.
the better
remarkable
part of six
phenomenon.
years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a
Jeez.
remarkable experience, and then there's it's so confusing. But I think that and I like what Alexis was talking about a transition that happens. There is, I think that, we're genetically predisposed to having the alcoholic trait for many of us. Um, but at a certain point in time, after habitually using or putting it in my body, does that I don't want to say it evolves, but you essentially pass a threshold. There's a saying that I think is rather apt in describing what that transition looks like. I don't want to oversimplify it by any means, but it's like a cucumber that becomes a pickle.
I
Once you're
love
a
that
pickle,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
I
Once
love
you're a
that
pickle,
saying.
there's no going back.
Yeah. You
Um,
can't go back to a cucumber, right? Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Or
yeah.
like a, what is it? A butterfly and a what is it? Oh my gosh. Is
Cocoon?
it a,
Cocoon.
yeah, you can, the butterfly comes out of the cocoon and can't go back.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
being a worm. So yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so if in kind of going to like the route through that and around that or to recovery, it's when I am able to identify, let's say that I'm a pickle, that there is a problem there, and I don't really have a choice and that I need help. I begin to open myself up to receiving that from whatever source that, and within like the 12-step model, obviously, or at least within the 12-step model, it's looking at how you're not able to do this on your own. That there
Yeah.
needs to be several things in place, regard like a community of individuals, a fellowship. You're going to have it is a spiritual program, so you are going to find something greater than yourself, ultimately, because you on your own self power weren't very successful in keeping yourself sober, and maybe there's something out there that's able to help you. And you continue to engage in this idea of growing and understanding that connection with whatever that power may be, and it brings you to a spot of contentment, of fulfillment. When we look at some people who go through the steps, there's a saying that, you'll make the most insane decision of your life stone cold sober. And that's to put it back in your body. And to be able to continuously work that program and incorporate it into your life keeps you connected with something greater than yourself. So those feelings of shame, those emotional feelings, the feelings of guilt, the stuff that is from that past life of active alcoholism or addiction, does not continuously manifest in the life of sobriety that you're living today. And then you continue on with that program of action. So much, you find so much contentment through engaging in that kind of program and having the experience that it offers you, that the thought of putting drugs and alcohol doesn't occur to you anymore. The problem has been removed. I don't think that working these kinds of programs mean that they have to wake up every day and avoid the liquor aisle at HEB. That wouldn't be very much freedom, you know. They're able to
Yeah.
live life again. They're able to live life again. There's a level of freedom that comes with it. You're able to go to weddings, you're able to go to functions, you're able to go and do things and live your life as you should. It's not something where we're avoiding it or afraid of it or cocky about it. We just get to live normal lives today. And I think that in itself is one of the most beautiful things about anyone's recovery journey. And I hope there's no misconception out there about being sober means you have to be boring or that you can't do certain things, right? It's in fact, it's probably the complete opposite, at least in the
Yeah.
experience that I've had.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
So,
true. That's sorry.
no, go
No,
ahead.
go
Oh,
ahead.
that's what gets on my nerves sometimes. And I know like nobody means any harm by it, but people be like, oh, are you okay if I have this drink? Or are you
Like
okay
coddling
if I
you.
have alcohol in the house? I'm like, no, I'm about to like go like get through your cupboards and take all your pills and drink all your alcohol.
That's funny.
No, and like they're just trying to be considerate, you know,
Yeah.
but it just
Yeah.
shows
Yeah.
like how much people don't understand. Well, and also there's like a lot of dry people out there that don't have a solution, so they're still in almost those like same character defects that they had that they're exhibiting that they had when they were drinking.
Yeah.
But I think when you have that solution and that true freedom and that true connection to something bigger than yourself, that you are like what Jake said, like able to live a free life and just live life and not crave, you know, alcohol or drugs.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. And
Beautiful. Yeah.
so for everyone that's listening, hopefully there's a bunch of people listening. Let's break down what 12 steps is. Like, what is AA? What is NA? What is the 12 steps? What does it consist of? It kind of sounds like there's a lot to break down, and I think you guys are the best to talk about it.
Yeah. So the first thing, AA and NA would be different types of fellowships and the types of programs that they work. They both have their own separate books with their own individualistic way of tackling the disease of alcoholism or addiction. I'm more familiar with the AA 12-step model above most things. And so within that 12-step model, there's a logo that AA uses called the circle and triangle, and you have a triangle with a circle around it. It's pretty cool. And you have three sides of that triangle, and they're all meant to represent something. Each side of the triangle represents recovery, service, and unity. And the circle is meant to represent balance. And the idea is that if you have a level of engagement within those three aspects of your personal program, that you will have achieved balance in your own personal sobriety. And then we look at what those triangles actually mean. Recovery would be the 12 steps in its entirety. It would be working through each individualistic step. I mean, I could get into every single step, but that would take get here for hours. But the
Yeah.
goal is to um, the in the most simplified way that you could view it would be that the lifestyle that you were living in active alcoholism and addiction, uh, that has to change. If you take the
Hmm.
same behaviors that you experienced in that lifestyle and began to try to incorporate them in your life of recovery, it's going to drive you back to that original spot. And so the 12 steps is designed to shed these parts of self that ultimately manifest in active addiction or alcoholism. Again, it's not this like you're a bad person, you need to be a good person, because if that were true, I think everyone would recover pretty easily. I don't think anyone wants to be a bad person, right? I think that motive alone would get a lot of people sober. It's just these belief systems that have been incorporated over several different years that the 12 steps helps take you out of through things like an introspective look at how your life has played out through the fourth step in inventory, and you start to dive deep into these belief systems that have been driving you over the course of several years. There's a type of confession, if you will, where you go through your life story with another person. As somebody I know in my life says, when you bring it to the light, it's a fair fight. There's no longer that feeling of isolation or these masks that you have to pretend to be. You really return to a spot of authenticity within self, and then you
Mhm.
go out and you make all the harms that you would cause to people, you make those things right. You essentially restore balance to the universe around you, and all of this is meant to get you connected with whatever that power is that you so choose it to be. And then you continuously maintain this new freedom or awareness that you've been given as a byproduct of working those steps in these what we call maintenance steps, where you're actively doing something every day to stay engaged within that program of action, whether it's going to meetings, whether it's helping another addict alcoholic, whether it's meditation, prayer, and a state of reflection and mindfulness as you continue to operate just in life. And so that would deal with a third of the program is the 12-step program. The unity aspect would be just the body of people. I think it would be very challenging for any soul to get sober just on their own. The sense of community and camaraderie in the idea that they're all escaping this the alcoholic or addict pit is one of the most powerful things that you can really give to somebody when you're having people invite you to go and do things. And most people's experience in alcoholism or addiction ends with a very antisocial, isolated lifestyle where there's not really much interaction with the outside world. You're kind of just shut in. You got the blackout blinds and you're just hanging out and just, doing your thing. And so
100%.
that, yeah, and so that sense of community and camaraderie is a huge part of this whole deal. Whether it's in the recovery community, especially out here in Austin, there's so much to do. I mean, people go skydiving, laser tagging. There's softball teams, there's volleyball teams. People go skeet shooting. People go out to dinner. There's conventions. It's alive. It's life, right? And so to
Hmm.
be
Mhm.
engaged in that aspect of your program is going to be very important as well. And then the last side of the triangle, which is where most individuals who work a program operate today, is the service side, and that is giving back. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous is something that you can freely tap into in the real world. And if that the solution that works for you, if that's been given to you for free, it's only makes sense that you also help somebody else out and take them through the steps and show them what you did in order to recover. And so when you stay engaged with those different aspects of that type of program, it keeps you directly in the center of that circle and triangle.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And you continue to do that. And over time, like balance is such a gray term, and over time, like you'll oscillate. There's ups and downs, there's ebbs and flows, just as there is in life.
Mhm.
But you continue to evolve and grow as a person through those experiences. As your life evolves, so does this the 12-step program of recovery with you. And you get to see, man, you get to see people who have just been,
In
man,
the dumps and back up.
oh, dude,
Yeah.
and it is remarkable. Most addicts and alcoholics are incredibly intelligent, creative, loving, and some of the most wonderful individuals that I've ever had the
Mhm.
pleasure of meeting. They just never had that opportunity to really let that part of themselves shine. And when you start to get engaged in that program, they awaken, and you start to see that
Hmm.
light come on in their eyes. And but that's about the fairest estimate or depiction I could give you of the 12 steps without it getting really, really in depth. So I hope that was helpful.
Yeah, no, absolutely it was. You definitely gave some light into what it is and how it works. And
Mhm.
Alexis, can give us a little screenshot of what it's done for you and what it means to you as well.
Oh my God, first of all, Jake, I have never heard you share that. Like Jake's at residential in Buda and I'm in outreach. So I'm like bebopping all around town, at the hospitals and meeting with people and all the things. So I get to spend some time at residential, but usually I will go and sit in with the women and just get reconnected to the mission. Cause sometimes it's hard, like when you're out, meeting and like building relationships with accounts to, I
Hmm.
need that, like, I need to be in the trenches a little bit,
You
right?
need to
My background,
recharge.
yeah,
Yeah.
I need a
Just
recharge.
recharge.
Like, why am I doing this? What's my purpose? Let me hang out with the women, with these women. Like, so anyway, so that was really, really beautiful to hear you share that, Jake. Like, I was trying not to cry on camera.
We could have edited it out, don't worry.
Yeah. So I've been sober for almost 12 years, and I can
Wow.
relate a lot to, you know, what Jake was saying about like oscillating kind of in and out, and like not working, you know, this idea of a perfect program. And so like at times it's interesting, like even almost at 12 years, I'll almost convince myself of like imposter syndrome, right? But there's a reason I'm 12 years sober, and it's because when I do oscillate and I do kind of, my pendulum swings, like I am so convinced that my disease is so strong that if I put alcohol into my body, that I will eventually go back. And you know what? I might be able to manage for a couple weeks or a month or whatever, but I know that there will be a triggering factor that will take me right back to where I am, or
Yeah.
to where I was. And so I think, you know, it's given me, and Jake probably said this, but it's like a template to live life. Like, I honestly think everyone should have this template, like not just people in recovery, but just every human, because it's such a beautiful way to move through life. Everyone has resentment, everyone has fear, everyone has anxieties about things. Like, this is not unique to the addict and alcoholic. This is unique to the human experience.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think I'm very lucky and full of gratitude that I get to be a part of this fellowship. And I think that everybody should read the big book, because I think it could be extremely beneficial in every human's life. And so, and like just the like what Jake was saying, like the fellowship there, to me, there's nothing like it, because I think we all tend to move around the world with these masks on. And when you're in recovery, like that mask is off, you know, like you're your most authentic raw self, and you're seeing other people for their most authentic and raw self. And there's something like just so uniquely beautiful and comforting, that I get to show up to life that way today.
Yeah.
I
So
like the way you put that. That's, you are your authentic self and the mask is off, because a lot of people hide what they do and they put it in a closet and they only do it behind closed doors. And in recovery, you literally, it's out there. You live it. That was very well put too.
Well, you know what, Alexis, I've known you for 13 years now, right? And so
I know, that's crazy.
Yeah. So you know, you mentioned you've been 12 years sober, and then Chris just mentioned the, like, you know, kind of hiding it, right? I would have had no idea for that year that we worked together that you were going, or you were struggling, or you were going through your addiction the way you were, right? Like your crazy nights and whatever. I still see you, like the person that I met 13 years ago is the same person that I see today, in the sense that you're caring, you're, you know, you're thoughtful, you're intelligent. Like you are the Alexis that I met 13 years ago, right? I, as a friend, would have never known that you were going through struggles. So I feel bad because I wasn't there for you for that year that you were kind of going through it. Does that make sense? So you did a really good job of kind of hiding it. Unfortunately, you were hiding it, but I'm so proud of you for the last 12 years that you have become this amazing woman and awesome mom. And just, it's really great to see.
Thank you. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah. I was definitely good at hiding it at times.
Yeah, I think we
Points in
all
my
are good
addiction,
at
I
it.
was not hiding anything.
Crazy.
Yeah, I think we were all good at hiding it up to a certain point till it couldn't be hidden either way, no matter how hard you try. It's kind of like a superpower at some point.
It
And
can
that
be
goes-
very detrimental even today, you know, because you do get good at like hiding how you're truly feeling, and sometimes you can suppress it or like not reach out for help when you need to. Especially in long-term recovery, where you're almost like expected to be well at all times. And maybe that's like me, like I'm just, that's like my assumption. Like nobody's actually projecting that onto me. That's just my own stuff,
Oh,
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I feel like if I let out anything, any little just window of me not being okay, people are gonna be like, oh my God, he's gonna relapse. He's gonna do this. He's gonna go back
I
to it.
know.
It's like, no, I'm not. I'm just a normal person and I'm not having a good day.
Uh,
Yeah.
and it kind of goes back to the that idea of like the role reversal, or talking about the mask off, which is something that's so categorically different from the way that they operate within active addiction or alcoholism. It's such a different pace of life. And when you enter like a treatment center after, out there drugging and using for, let's say, 10, 15 years, and hiding things from people and being secretive, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, let's be vulnerable now, let's talk about what's really, you know what I mean? And it can be a change of pace. And I think one of the cool things that you get to see with working with people is there's such a level of doubt in the process, right? Because they've been in this for so long that they're like, man, how could being vulnerable or being honest or having it, how could these things like really actually help me get over these things, and for good merit, it seems very simple ultimately, right? They feel like there has to be this super magical thing that has to occur in the moment to bring about all this relief. But you have these guys that walk through these experiences where they are changing the way that they've been moving through life, and it surprises them, and it's
Yeah.
refreshing. And you see them having these rather like dysregulated, and anyone's experienced the dysregulated kind of emotional state, and this up and down, this back and forth, and there's this certain level of consistency that they begin to find, and
Mhm.
this calmness, right? And it's a really a reflection of how they're beginning to digest and experience life on a day-to-day level. There isn't this bouncing around, and they find that these very simple tools and the things that they begin to incorporate, to be massively beneficial. And I think something that's important to note with anyone who, if anyone is listening to this, is currently struggling or wants to know what it looks like, it's not something that's going to happen immediately.
Mhm.
It's not going to be like, man, you go to bed one night and you wake up the next day and poof, it's all good. It's going to take a little bit of time, and I say that really to inspire a level of grace to have within yourself around whatever process that you're engaging in. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days, especially in early recovery. It is going to be a little bit ugly, and I think that's kind of one of the beautiful parts about it, is that no one does it perfectly. There isn't You couldn't pick anyone out of the crowd and be like, oh, this person did it exactly. Like it's gonna be ugly, and that's kind of one of the fact that you're able to do it regardless of how it looks, and walk through with a little bit of grace. I think that really adds in the foundation of your own personal sobriety and your own journey. You did it the way that it worked for you, and you walked all
Yeah.
through all of those tough emotions and experiences, and it allows you to be a more full version of yourself. And I see that to be very inspiring. And whether you're 12 years sober, whether you're a week sober, life is life, and it doesn't stop,
Yeah.
Mhm.
just because I decided to stop trying to use or drink, right?
Yeah,
Well, speaking of
absolutely.
inspiring, you two are one of the, I mean, you guys have opened my eyes to a whole different, viewpoint or vantage point, right? And so I want to thank you both for coming on the show. We're running short on time, but you guys are welcome back anytime. Obviously, Alexis, you're a mainstay with the program. So Jake, thank you again for your insight and your explanation, and so we really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate it. And thank you for the passion and insight. It was
Mhm.
amazing.
Yep. Till next week, guys.
See
We'll
you
see you
next week.
soon. Take care.
Bye. Thanks, guys.